So, dude, what's going on, man? This is huge. I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
No drama.
So, you're in Czech Republic. How did you end up down there?
I came here because, well, years ago I was living in Australia,
Hmm.
and then I moved to Austria, and I was doing racing in Austria.
Hmm.
So my desire was to come to Europe and do some bike races. I just joined a club in Austria, and I started doing races there. And Austria borders Czech Republic, and we had a lot of Czech riders in our team, sports directors, staff members from Czech also. And I just slowly moved across the border somehow, and then yeah, stayed here since. But I was living in Czech. So first in Austria for 4 years, and then I moved to Czech Republic, still racing in Austria, and then I joined T-Mobile, and they said I could stay in Czech Republic. And then as the years went on, I just was here longer and longer, and then I just had no real reason to move to a different place. And as an Australian, well, as a non-European, you sort of get you get grounded pretty quick in one location, I think, in Europe. I'm on the I'm on the other side of Prague, so I'm on the border of Poland and Slovakia.
Okay.
Uh, and we have like the Beskidi Mountains here, so there's yes, so it's very hilly. It's great for training. We have good winters also, so like we still have snow. Actually, it's a long winter now. So and I like the 4 seasons because it breaks up the cycling. You can do some cross training. You can keep your head fresh, and when the season starts, you just meant you want to race. Where in the past where I fell into the trap of always going back to Australia. And the problem with this is you finish the season, you're back on the road, you're just doing miles, miles, miles. You train for like 2 or 3 months, the season starts, and you've almost had enough of the bike. Where this way with the winter sports, like you put the bike aside, you do something totally different. And even though you want to ride, sometimes I still keep it to the side. So when I do go to training camp, what I notice, especially with like Lotto Sedol, I'd go to training camp just wanting to ride my bike as much as possible. With the other guys there, they've just like, they've sort of come to training camp. They're not motivated because they've been training at home so much. And for me, the different seasons has really helped with my training.
Dude, I was blown away when I read that you would like cross train between Tour Down Under and Paris Nice. And I forget where I read this, but you were just like, yeah, I'm going to go for this like long hike and get like mentally fresh and come back and crush it. And I was like, this dude's awesome. Like everyone's so just like, especially more nowadays with all the stuff out there's like power, 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 power. And I have to, I grew up in upstate New York near Canada where your time was limited. You had like when the winter came, I'd go in and like ride the trainer a little bit, but there was no Zwift or anything. So like an hour was long enough. And now I'm more down in the southeast of the US and I can ride more. And I'm actually having to tell myself to like shelve the bike a little bit. Cause I noticed even this past winter, I was down in Florida a lot where it's 70 degrees. And so you can just ride, 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 ride. And I lift, but it's just not the same of putting it away. And even if it's for a couple weeks, but that's so how do you like, I mean, we're diving in, but like you have so much experience. When did you get the sense of like really understanding your body? Because I think it's hard for us amateurs. I've been training seriously, I guess I could say, for 10 years. So I know myself pretty well now. But for when I look back, like how did you see yourself going through that process? And like you became a pro very quickly, so you were probably working with like a lot of top people that maybe help mentor you in that shift, or like, you know what I mean? It's really like there's so much data now that I think people get caught up in it, and you don't strike me as that type of person. Like know Adam Hansen and what Adam needs. How do you like how do you go about that, like with your training?
Well, yeah, it's just really trial and error actually. So it's funny story how it originally happened. When I joined, so I used to do cross training. I just liked it, but I didn't do it so intensively during the season.
Okay.
And when I joined T-Mobile, there was a problem with them sending me wheels, and it wasn't compatible with my bike, and I didn't have some wheels. And so I was back in Czech. I had no bike wheels, so I couldn't ride a bike. And for me, it was sort of like, okay, I'm not going to go and buy a pair of wheels just for 2 weeks of training. And
Yeah.
the team, it was a funny story, but the team didn't want to send wheels. It was yeah. And this is T-Mobile, right? So I was like, okay, I'm not going to ride my bike. I'm going to do cross training. So I just did hiking. I did Nordic skiing. I just did not touch the bike at all. And I went to this race in what was it? A race in the Netherlands, and Tony Martin was first, and I was second. And that was without touching the bike 2 weeks doing cross training. And when when I spoke to the like, cause all the everyone was laughing because they're like, "Oh, we're not going to ride our bikes now. We're just going to do hiking because it's better training, things like that." And it's a bit of a joke. And the thing is, I would have won the race because I was stronger than Tony Martin, but I had a flat tire because we were both
Oh
in a
my
breakaway. I had a flat tire. I think it was like 6K to go, and so we made a deal. Okay, you wait for me. I give you the win because I had a flat tire, and then
God.
yeah, and that was it. Where I was the older rider and I was doing all the work in breakaway, so I was meant to get the win. But the flat tire changed in that, so everyone was like,
Oh my
"Oh, we should cross training and things like this." And then, so in my head, it was like, well, if you think about it, from a cardiovascular point of view, you're training the heart, you're training the blood.
Mhm.
And this is really important. This is what endurance training is. When you're doing a long ride, let's say, like for me, if I was to do a 220 to 240 watt constant ride for 5 hours, it's not such a big strain on the muscles. It's more, you're more training your fat metabolism, you're training different energy systems, and you can do the exact same thing on different forms of training. But I think people struggle mentally with this. We're like, oh, I haven't touched my bike, and they freak out. As soon as you have a bad moment in the race, you're talking to your head and you're like, oh, it's
Mhm.
because of this, this, this. And you sort of deviate down that path as, I'm doing the wrong thing. So for me, when I had it mentally, like, I've done it before, it's proven, and we did have this one I used to call super coach, Sebastian Weber, in our team. And when the other coaches or sports directors found out I wasn't doing a lot of bike training, they would go to the coach and go, hey, Hansen's not doing proper bike training. He's doing all this cross training. And Sebastian Weber was like, yeah, it's actually good training. Because Sebastian was also a hiker himself, and he knows you can go uphill at 170 heart rate for 30, 40 minutes, which is pretty hard to do on a bike.
Mhm.
You really have to stress your body to do that, because when you're hiking, you use the sticks, and you're snow walking, using more muscles, you have more blood flow, you have higher heart rate. So you can get very good training with it. Yeah. So basically from that, I just carried it through. And, because I'm in Czech, I would do like down under, I'd come to Czech. I would just I would not ride outside. I'd go to UAE. I did the UAE tour without riding outside. And my first bike ride outside of the year was there. And then I'd come back to Czech, and then I would just do all cross training. I'd go to Paris, Nice, and that'll be the first time I ride outside also. And then from then I would train outside after.
So for everybody that's gonna watch this, Adam Hansen is even more of a savage than we already thought. This is super badass, dude. It's crazy. These like rowers and Nordic skiers, they come into cycling and they get on the bike and there's like, it's like, oh
Yeah.
damn, I should have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
When you talk about cross training, you weren't doing it during the season. Did that always? You know, a lot of coaches don't want to talk about weightlifting because it is hard to like sometimes you feel good when you're lifting or doing cross training and trying to get ready for the season, but then that kind of shifts as you're doing maybe more intervals or more race specific prep. What's your thought on cross training now that you're into triathlon all year long, or are you still more doing it just pre you like your race period, or how does that break down? Is there any rhyme or reason to that?
I really believe that, you got to do it 100% or nothing. So, like, let's say
Okay.
you do no cross training, you get in the middle of the season, you decide to do like a hike. A hike's very good because you use the same muscles cycling when you're going uphill. So you can do that. But when you go downhill, you have the impact of the muscles, and this is something
Mm,
totally different. And this is a killer for cyclists. And you'll tear the muscle fibers in a different direction, and you'll actually not be able to walk just by going downhill, no effort, just because of the impact. You won't be able to walk for 2 or 3 days properly. But if you do it constantly, then it's okay to do some type of cross training. But yeah, I wouldn't do like one-off cross training. With gym work, I'm a huge believer in gym. I'm not a fan of the gym, so I like during the off season I do quite a lot. I used to go to the gym before the COVID, but then I believe if you're going to do gym work or free weights, you should always do it. Don't start during the season, because yeah, you'll definitely put the muscles in a territory they're not used to, and then it'll cost you more than it'll gain. If you want to do it always. But if not, yeah, I would stay away from it.
do you do like heavy lifting, or are you more like 85% heavy lift and like more reps, or are you like a 5 by 3 like heavy maxing out type thing, or a combo of both?
Yeah, for me, it's more a little bit lower, but more
Okay.
explosive, more
Okay.
really, really explosive.
And that's all you're whenever you're lifting, you're doing like explosive.
Yeah, well, I do like I treat weights. I actually treat everything in a form of different form of like training. So you do your long rides. So if I do a long ride, then it's like a high reps, low weight, and then you do have some days where you just want to go, the shorter reps, like you said, a higher percentage of your max. But I don't like to do this so often. Where I'd much rather do sessions where longer reps, much lower weight, and then really explosive.
Okay.
Like really explosive. Because I do
Okay.
feel if you do too much weight training, you lose the speed of the muscle. And cycling, we definitely need this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to a guy, I don't know if you know the name Ashton Lambie. He's a track guy from the US and he's big into lifting. I got his name from a guy I used to race road with. Long story short, I guess there's a term potentiation that it's like recruiting more muscle mass and almost like warming up with like rack pulls, I think it's called. But I started trying, I never thought I could deadlift and then go do like a 3 minute banger. And I was finding that on these short, like it's not all neuromuscular, but more anaerobic efforts, I could lift and then ride after, and I would get on the bike and I felt like I didn't even have to warm up. I'm like, this is weird. My issue with it is I'm more of a diesel. I do some like longer interval stuff. Now that I'm getting more closer to a race season and COVID's kind of breaking here and well, sort of. Um, Longer intervals, I'm finding myself failing more in like the third set. And so I've been trying to shift maybe lifting to endurance days, but then I'm like, damn, I'm making endurance days too hard. And it's just kind of like this, I mean, all training is a juggling act, but I'm always just curious what athletes that are into it, how they apply it. And it just, everyone kind of finds their own routine. And I think at the end of the day, it goes back to the first comment, like you got to learn yourself and experiment and see what works. And when you look back at when you think of Adam Hansen in cycling, like what do you think of? Because now, and I don't know if you're still a cyclist, but I got a chuckle. You were talking about triathlon this summer, and you're like, "Oh, cycling's like my least favorite leg of the sport now." And you're building the pool in your family room and doing all these other like. It seemed like you're very tri-focused. But when you look back as a cyclist, like how do you see yourself as like what you left? Like, dude, I can't believe I'm talking to Adam Hansen. Like, you probably get that a lot. Like, holy crap, dude. Like, do you like what have you left behind? I mean, I'm just curious how you see yourself.
I think
And
I'll
it's a
always
tough
be known.
question.
I do think I'll always be known as the guy that did the 20 grand tours in the rock.
Hmm.
I will never lose that one. I think. I didn't realize how special that was when, at the start of the bike races, you go up and you sign on the podium, and the commentator would speak about the riders. And this guy won this race, and this guy won this race, and this guy won this race. And every time I go up, people are like, "Oh, and Adam, this is 19th in a row. He's on Giro Tour, World Tour, and for 7 years." And he was so much more passionate about it. The fans are so much more interested, and I realized it really differentiate me from the different other cyclists. And it was something, like this is going to sound cheesy, but someone wins Milan San Remo every year. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And then I'm not saying what I did is better than winning Milan San Remo. It's just that it's because it's so different. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, it's actually an interesting thing. And I think because just because it's so different and unique and something totally out there. I'm happy I've done this in that way. I know I lost. I sort of gave up on other ambitions in that going in that direction. But it's nice that I had something that's no one's ever done, something really unique, and I'm proud of it. And I'm more proud of it than my stage wins in the Giro and the Belter and the types of teams I've been riding in. So I'm very happy that I've done something unique and different.
That's awesome because I mean, it's just like, we click on the tour and it's like, all right, is Adam, Adam, is he going to be in a break? What's this guy doing today? Adam takes off. Like, you get the 2 wins. You're back at the next tour. You're back at the next tour. It's just like, oh, dude, this guy's a freaking machine. What did it at some point become like, all right, I just got to see how many of these I can rack up? And was there any point where you were like, dude, I am getting roasted from this? Because people talk about doing two in a row. You're, it's like, who is this guy? Like, when did the ball really get rolling? Because I think that your first one was early on, and then you did back to back in like your third or fourth season. Like, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize how difficult it was until like I'd be doing the Velta, and I'd have like on a super difficult stage where everyone is just smashed, and I'd have guys just come up to me, like random guys, like, and this is your third one this year. This is my first one, and I'm so, and we just click up and they're like, that's true, like guys, this is their first Grand Tour of the season. Um, Yeah, I think yeah, it's
Did the
for
team
me.
ask you? Were they just like, "Yo, oh, Grand Tour, yeah, send Adam. Like, we know
No,
he's
I well,
down."
okay. I did the Giro and I did the tour, and I was like, "Can I do the Delta?" And they're like, "Yeah, but you do the Giro and Tour. Basically, if you do the Giro and Tour, you can have the rest of the season off. You maybe have to show your face at two races, two small races to fill the numbers, but you have the season off." I'm like, "No, no, I want to do the Delta." And the sports director's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and he laughed it off. And I saw the list of the riders, and I wasn't there, so I emailed him and said, "Hey, I really want to do the Delta." He goes, "Yeah, good job." And I was like, "No, I'm serious." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." So I did it, and I did well, helped the team, did my job, did everything. And then next year, so I wanted to do the same thing. And they said, "Yeah, but you should have a rest year." And things like, "No, no, I'll do the same thing." I did it, and they were super happy. And then after a while, I was like, "I really like this program," because there was many things. Like, I love stage races. I just love this type of racing because when you hop on a plane, you travel somewhere, you do a 1 day race, and it goes bad, that's it. It's over. And you fly home and you spent
Mhm.
like the whole 4 or 5 days, and it's just a disaster. In a Grand Tour, there's always tomorrow, there's always the next day, and there's always something. And you always go home with some type of reward. You help some guy get a win, or you got a team win, or you personally got a win, or you're in a breakaway, you showed your face. And there's always some positiveness you can take away from Grand Tour. And I really liked that. But also, I liked how I was at home more. People thought I was away racing more, but what actually happened was I only did 9 races a year, which is super
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
Where I'd do the Giro, I'd have a month at home, do the tour, month at home, and do the Delta. And when I have a month, I have like a week off, and I have like a build up phase, and then I have like strength phase, and then like a speed phase, and I go into the race. And I could really train at like triathlons in a sense, where you have one goal. Where
Mhm.
normal race program, you're racing every second week, and it's hard to have like. What I never liked is I'd always like to have a structured program. You'd have an easy week, but then you got to do a race at the end of the week, and it's sort of like, and you go to the race, and there's no easy races. I know sports directors, coach, yeah, just take the race easy. It's like, yeah, this doesn't happen at world skill level. Not in today's time. Like, there's no race that's easy anymore. So you can't use races for training. So with the Grand Tours, I had lots of time at home, lots of rest period. I could have a really structured program, and it was easy. It was easy in a sense.
It looks interesting because when you look back at like 2015 and maybe 18, it was like Tour Down Under, Paris-Nice, Tour of Turkey, 3 Grand Tours, and he's done. It's just like your race list is just like it's like crazy. But what's your favorite stage race outside of the Grand Tours? So maybe like a
Um,
7 to 10 dayer.
yeah, Tour of Turkey. I love Turkey.
Yeah. What was it about that race?
It's just always good weather. And for me, I always had a chance to ride for myself. So I
Mm,
had a few top tens in GC,
mhm.
and I just had like I should have won 1 year. I had 1 year where I just had just problem after problem after. Like, first was like I was waiting for Andre and arguing with him up the climb, like, let's go and sprint. He's like, "You guys, I wait with you," and the first group's going, and then you're
Uh,
like, "Come on!" And this happened a lot though, where we were just like, "Come on!" And he feels bad when I wait for him, so he's like, he has to go because I'm like, my
mhm.
GC is gone if you don't come with me, So
Yeah.
like, he applied for it, and this one time he was like, "No." Yeah, clicks. And then I have to go back to the first group. And it was like 40 guys or something. So it's pretty easy to stay with them. And it was uphill. And I just got on the back. And then it split in the crosswind in the middle. And then
Oh,
I was
gee.
in the second group. And so I lost 2 minutes there. And the next day, we had this, the team was doing really great in the crosswinds. And then my own teammate flicked me, put me in the gut, and he split our group. And I was in the second part. And our team got like, I think 5 in the top 8 or something, and my own teammate flicked me there, so I lost another 2 minutes there.
Oh
And then
my
on the
god.
mountain, on the uphill finish, the mechanic didn't do the sprocket on, because we asked to change the sprockets, and he didn't do the lock ring tight enough, and my cassette came loose on the uphill, and I lost 2 minutes there. And then still, I was like seventh or ninth overall, and it was my like my first chance of winning something, and just every day something. I was just like, yeah. But for me, this race, I just always, because this was a preparation race for the Giro. So it
Mhm.
was, and I'd have a month off before. So I'd always have super good training at home. And I can do really well if I have a structured program. I don't like this going to race every week.
Mhm.
And when I'd have a full month off there, Turkey, I would always be in good form, and then Giro and just take it off. with
So
good weather and
what are you doing
it's nice.
between those races? What are you doing before the Grand Tour?
I take like almost a full week off the bike. So if it was Giro Tour, I'd take the full week off the bike, and then I would do like the second week be like sort of maybe 4 or 5 days of just long rides, just take it really easy, but long, and towards the end of them, like the fourth or fifth one, I would do like more constant. So really keep the power really constant.
Mhm.
And then I'd go to more like a speed phase with the strength phase where I do 1 day speed work intervals. So it might be 40-20s and then a few 5-minute efforts on FTP or high FTP. And then I would just pick a climb that's like 6 minutes long. So I do 40-20s up and come down. I do like 120 FTP, come down. I'll do like a strength block and come down, and then I'll do rest one, and I'll do that again. And then that'll be like that could be like a 2.5 hour ride. That's it. Then go
Mhm.
home, and the next day would be more strength based. So almost the same thing, longer climb, a bit more strength based. And then third day, because I do it like this, when the first day you're fresh, so you can really do. So I do sprints also on the first day. So you do your sprint work when you do that at maximum. You do your speed work intervals where you really have to be fresh to do them. Day two, you're a little bit fatigued. You can do strength work because you don't have you can't
Muscle
fire
it.
the muscle too well. So
Mhm.
it's just more strength work. And so day two is strength work, and then day three, when you're really fatigued, you can do a long ride. So you do a long ride there. When I do it like that, for me, I can do every day at maximum. Fourth day, complete rest, do it again. And then as the days got on, the speed work got harder, strength work went a little bit less, and then long rides went more shorter but higher wattage. And then, have a week off, easier before the Grand Tour, and then be into it.
Higher wattage, like tempo, like riding like a 3 hour like tempo, like a solid clip, or not that hard?
Maybe like more 4 hours at like 270, I would get into. That'd be where I'd aim for. I'd start at like 6-7 hours at 220, and then I'd sort of bring them together, if that makes sense, and make it shorter and power go up.
So it seems like you're getting a lot of very varying up the stimulus in a lot of different ways. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I really believe in like the different energy systems, so especially like with fat metabolism. So these long rides are more, like I
Mhm.
do it fasted and more really try and promote your fat metabolism. I'm a huge, like full high carb guy, but when you race, you only have a certain amount of carbs you can digest per hour. You can only store a certain amount. The rest is from fat. The more fat, the better your fat metabolism. Then you can spare your glycogen and you can use that at the end of the race. So yeah, I do a lot of fat burning rides, and that's always with. So every long ride I do is always fasted because it's always fasted.
So you're
But
not eating
what?
anything before,
Nothing. No.
and
Oh,
then
even yeah.
you're gonna go out for 6 hours, and what are you gonna refuel it all per hour, or are you trying to
No,
not? You're not eating
no,
anything.
nothing. But when you do it, you cannot go, like if you set it at 220, you don't go over 220.
So 220 for you is like what? 50
220? Mm.
percent FTP, 55%.
Yeah, depending on the form, yeah.
Okay.
And I can build that up to, like if I do a full fasted 4 hour ride, probably the maximum wattage I could do is like 290 fasted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if anybody does this, don't tell you that I told you to do this because this is going to wreck some people.
Oh,
So
well, okay. If you start it, say if you start, no, I really believe this is really one of the big things because cyclists aren't strong. When like if when you do the Tour de France, you do those post criteriums, pros get smashed by the amateurs because they're
mhm,
equally as strong. They're equally as strong. The only difference is the pros have done so many races, their fat metabolism is so much better, but they're not.
mhm,
They're not they're not actually not physically stronger. But the thing
mhm,
is, when you do Milan San Remo is a great example. When you do Milan San Remo, when you look at the Poggio, it's so easy climb. It's really an easy climb. But after 300 kilometers, it's super hard. And the guy that has the best fat metabolism that stores the glycogen will always do better than an amateur who's done seasonal racing just for 1 year and he just hasn't tapped into the fat metabolism. So if you're going to get into fat metabolism ride, I would recommend is don't have breakfast, start training, eat a quarter of a bar as soon as you start. And then every 20, 30 minutes, have a quarter of a bar. And then the next cycle of your training program, you have a long ride, don't have breakfast, and then do 20 minutes first without eating, and then have that quarter of a bar. And then just slowly push that further away. And then when you get to the extreme, you don't have to eat the night before, and then you don't have breakfast, and it can almost be a 24-hour. Because the thing is,
Good God, Adam. Woo!
This is actually important. So the thing is, when you have insulin, right, this blocks you from accessing fat as an energy source, right? So what you got to do is, even sometimes it's actually easier to eat nothing, because when you have no insulin spike, then you can have full access to your body fat, and you have endless supply of body fat. So it's all there. But if you're constantly eating and you're going a little bit too hard in your training, then you're telling your body, oh, don't take fat because we've got insulin here. You've got to use sugar. Mm-hmm. But you have no sugar, then you're going to feel terrible, and you feel lethargic, and you're not going to be able to train well. So on your high carb days, have sugar, have it, do your performance, hit the numbers that you want. But on the fat metabolism days, then really, the less you eat, the better it is, because the more insulin spikes you have, you're going to block the access of body fat, and that's actually what you need for these types of training.
So practically speaking, for an athlete that might only get to, like, in the US, like category 3, let's say, so he's doing a 3-hour road race, would you put this on the less important scale, since he can still have enough carbohydrate or glycogen for his type of race? And would this be more than for only people that are getting, gravel's big in the US, these 5, 6, 8-hour races? Maybe it's more important for athletes doing those.
So it's definitely for the gravel races, 100%. Mm-hmm. I would definitely do that. If it's only a 3-hour road race, and depending, some of the numbers people throw around is you can consume 80 grams of carbs per hour, 90 grams per hour. Some say it's 120 grams per hour carbs you can consume. If it's around, depending how good you're at this, and this is just to go back though, if you train your fat metabolism, that's one thing, but you've also got to train how you can absorb the carbs too. So on your interval days, really hit the carbs, because you've got to train your body to absorb it. So a lot of riders or athletes are doing this now, where they're really pushing the limit of how many carbs they can consume per hour. And if you can consume 120 grams of carbs per hour and it's a 3-hour bike race, fat is not, it's not the number one fuel source, that's for sure. And you can definitely get through the race.
So what's your so I was talking to some of the guys from Inside. Sebastian Weber's obviously big on the Fat Max ride. We have a race here called Gravel Worlds. I got dropped at mile like 130, came in 5th. And so one of the guys there was like, you need to do these Fat Max rides. And he had me go out and do 260 watts for 4.5 hours, refeed 40 grams of carbs an hour. Got through it. I felt pretty weird, to be honest with you. Like, I kind of was like getting sweaty towards the end, like in a weird way. And 40, I'm very carb heavy, so I'm like 90 to 100 usually. So it was 60 less an hour. Long story short, I felt pretty like smashed the next day. I don't think I would have been able, I'm wondering how fast do you recover from that type of ride? Does it wreck you at all? Or it's probably, I'm sure, because I was new to it. And I don't know, I'm big into doing like high intensity intervals like during the week on like a Tuesday. So I'm wondering, like, maybe this would be something I'd have to do on a Saturday so that I could like get the glycogen back in my muscles so I can actually go hard on Tuesday. Or what's your thought on that? Did it like throw you off for high intensity stuff?
Yeah. If you're doing 260 watts, so you said 260 watts per hour.
Yeah.
About
it was. And so it was, I'm trying to think what the breakdown was. So that's like
950 calories per hour, maybe.
Yeah.
40 calories per hour. And you're consuming 40 grams per hour, which is like 160 calories. So, it's a huge deficit where you got to use your fat metabolism. What I try and normally do is when you also do, let's say you go through a fasted state, what happens is your human growth hormones go through the roof. So you can actually have like a 1,500% incline in growth hormones. So if I was to do something like this, you said you ate nothing for the first 4 hours, and then you sort of...
No, I was doing 40 grams an hour still. I was
40 grams an hour still.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way to start. But 40 grams.
should I have felt as depleted as I did? Like
Oh,
even
for sure. Yeah.
my legs looked like all the glycogen was gone. And some people have told me that, oh, you can restore glycogen within 20 hours. Other people have told me 48 hours. Either way, I was like, it was Sunday, and by Tuesday, I was like, I'm not ready to crush anything. And I just waited till Wednesday, and I felt fine. But I was just like, I struggle with it, and I hate saying this, but it's like, it's one of those things where there's not a metric to put on it. Like when you fast and you get all these, like, I know you're big into autophagy, or I read it somewhere that you were into it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, or that, we're talking about the human growth hormone. It's not something that I can measure. So I'm like, I don't know if it's really working. Nah. And
How was your? Tell me your recovery meal after this ride.
uh, well, I'm pretty usually like rice, chicken, greens. I don't know the exact one. This was last summer that I did it.
What I would do is when you finish a ride like that, so if you finish a race or any type of ride where you're really glycogen depleted, and you've torn a few muscle fibers because it was a hard session, obviously you have a protein after the ride for muscle recovery. My feeling is when you said you didn't feel good, wasn't glycogen depletion, it's more that your muscles haven't recovered from the effort.
Might have been that, which is weird because when it's not high intensity, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, but still, it's because you're limiting the energy supply. It's still hard on the muscles. So the best way to recover from any session that I think is when you finish the session, have a fast sugar. So I'm not going to recommend Sprite or something like this, but something like this is actually really good. And what that does is it creates a huge insulin spike. And when you have a huge insulin spike, you're very anabolic. And that's when all your cells are opened up, and basically it's just screaming. It just gives your cells access to what's around. And then have your protein. If you do not have the sugar before the protein, then the protein just sits there and it's very hard. It's much harder to get into the cells. You do have to have 4 grams of lysine, which is BCAA. That's one of the main ones to trigger protein synthesis for fast recovery. So you need the glycogen. That's why you see a lot of protein powders today. It's a mix of carbo protein together. So what they're doing, they're just putting it all together and selling it as easier. But what I prefer to do is like have some fast sugar, and this is where you can treat yourself. So if you want a packet of candy or a Sprite or something like this, because that's what the cyclists do at the end of the race. They have a Sprite directly or Fanta or something like this. So you create a huge insulin spike, and then your cells are all open. And then you have your protein, and then you can really absorb the protein much better. Because I really believe that in this case, it's more that you're fatigued from the protein, not recovering enough. And this can make a big difference.
So, man, I almost don't even want to go down this road because I don't want to get it back into it because fasting for me is hard. But intermittent fasting, what's your top 3 reasons why you do it?
Hey guys, we're going to take a quick break here. Thanks for checking out the first part of the podcast with Adam Hansen. Still can't believe he came on. And we will finish talking about intermittent fasting and get into a ton more about training and racing. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel and wherever you stream podcasts. And if you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend, and please leave us a 5-star review if you think we earned it on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Good luck with your training.